Hedgerows. The UK has an awful lot of them. A recent laser scanning study was done which mapped all of the hedgerows in the UK, and it found that if they were put in a line on end to end, they would wrap around the world 10 times over. 10 times over, that's so many hedgerows. Now hedgerows come in many different shapes, sizes, ages and conditions. They almost always signify the boundary between different land uses and different landowners. They really actually do signify just how much we've fragmented and dissected this country. But they also stand for something else, and that's connectivity. You see, hedgerows can act as corridors, they can act as avenues through the landscape, through hostile environments. And when they're big enough, they can link up entire patches of habitat. We're going to be catching up with the young wilders, where we're going to be planting some hedgerows, and we're also going to be chatting to Mike from the Big Green Internet, who is really spearheading this progression of green corridors in the UK. The history of hedges in Britain is a long one, dating back to Roman times. But in the past century, something quite drastic happened. Between 1950 and 2007, we lost just over half of our hedgerows, going from 1 million to 477,000 kilometres. A loss attributed to landowners being incentivised to do so, to produce food. And over this time, more than half of the hedges which remained had fallen into poor structural condition. For the British landscape, this is a huge ecological loss.
I'm Jack, the director of Young Wilders. We're a small non-profit based in the UK doing youth-led nature recovery work, and our two aims are to accelerate the nature recovery of the UK and to get young people involved in the process and the movement. Today we're doing some hedgerow planting, which I think, if you're just kind of entering the nature sphere, is possibly like the most boring kind of thing you could do, but actually they're so sick. When I was first kind of entering the rewilding space and getting fascinated by different aspects of it, it was like the big hitters that like got me engrossed originally. So just like species reintroduction, big wild spaces, like old growth forests, just like the kind of like enchanting fantasy of wilderness and stuff, and trying to bring that back. But as we kind of got into the world and started working primarily in southern England especially, where the context is like very specific and very difficult to do nature recovery work in, you have to learn how to maximize biodiversity and nature recovery in like the least disruptive and most like realistic ways. And one way that is absolutely phenomenal for nature recovery, and that also farmers love and it's really easy to implement, is hedgerows. They're like the green veins of the countryside. They allow animals to move much more freely through the landscape. They're fantastic for birds, fantastic for invertebrates, just like so good for all aspects of nature.
Jack's right, hedgerows are immense for wildlife, and you know, this is largely because of where you find them. More often than not, they're lining fields like this, just a sea of mud. Nothing can live out there. I mean, if you were a little invertebrate, where would you rather be? Would you rather be out there, or like down here in this long grass, we've got all of this deadwood, in the cracks in the branches, you know, in the spring and the summer, this is going to be full of nesting birds. And by the time this comes into flower, I've actually just seen a flower over here. This is going to be literally buzzing with life. Look, there's that flower, isn't that beautiful? So for smaller creatures, hedgerows are a great place to call home. But for larger animals, or for animals which like to move a little bit more, they do act as avenues through this. Leading the hedge planting is Mike, and since starting the Big Green Internet, he's honed the craft of hedge planting, creating an efficient method using custom-made tools, common sense, and hard work. Our hedge today will be cornering off a less productive section of this agricultural field. This area will be given back to nature, and although seemingly quite small, it certainly will have an impact for local wildlife. But importantly, this idea is huge. I wouldn't hesitate to say that most landowners have corners of fields which frequently flood or are hard to work to get machinery into. These spaces could be given back to nature at little cost to the landowner. In fact, with proper incentives, it could make them money. But it's also important to ensure that these created and existing habitats are talking to one another.
At ground level, if you drive around this part, any part of Essex, you would think we have a lot of hedgerows and we have a lot of woodlands. But if you go up in a drone and look down, one characteristic you will see is that we have a lot of woodlands that are standing there, sort of like isolated, sitting in a sea of intensive agriculture. So when I was walking around with the farmer here, finding a place to put a little woodland in, I said to him, you know, to me, we have enough woodlands here, but they're not talking and they're slowly dying. Wouldn't it be better if we actually started connecting them all together and create a big green internet of interconnected woodlands?
That's where wildlife corridors come in. Mike took me to see one of his first wildlife corridors, linking up two isolated patches of woodland.
Just look, Rob, at the woodlands. A woodland, 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 woodland. They don't talk.
No.
It's madness.
Isolated, yeah. Mike has developed a concept for wildlife corridors that consist of 4 different layers, from mown to rough grass up to shrubs and trees, all fitting within a 10-metre wide corridor.
I reckon that's a pretty good corridor for wildlife, running between this woodland here, right the way through to that one up there.
So hedgerows and wildlife corridors, you know, they really do seem like the most logical and effective way to rewild Britain at scale. And, you know, for the big green internet, they're doing brilliant work, but it is currently still localised to Essex. It is still early days. But a model has been created. We know how to do it. And I'm hopeful that over the coming years, this could be rolled out nationwide. You know, if we can lose over half of our hedgerows in 50 or 70 years, I'm pretty hopeful that we can bring them back, but it's going to take work. Work from people like the Young Wilders, you know, not only are they facilitating this work, but crucially, they're engaging young people with the rewilding movement, and that's going to be integral to success as we move forward. And if you got this far in the video, then please do consider subscribing. I make videos about nature restoration, big and small. I'm on a mission here to reach as many people and tell all of the fantastic stories of nature's recovery, because it is happening. We just need to shine a spotlight on it. So thanks for watching. Leave curious.